Justice Secretary Dominic Raab has vowed to overhaul the parole system after there was furious reaction to the release of double child murderer Colin Pitchfork.
Yes, 61-year-old Pitchfork was released on strict licence in September. He is now back behind bars after it was found he had reportedly approached multiple young women while out on walks near his bail hostel.
Now, he's not the only dangerous offender who's been sent back to prison. Jailed in 2011, paedophile teacher Nigel Leet was released in November last year before being recalled for breaching his licence just a few months later.
There was also outcry from the victims of the black cab rapist John Warboys after he was approved for parole in 2018. In response, more of his victims came forward and reported attacks, and the High Court acted fast to reverse the decision to release him.
We're joined now by Sue Gratrick, the sister of Colin Pitchfork's victim, Lynda, who says a man capable of such evil can never be safe on the streets. She has requested to remain anonymous during this interview and joins us alongside former probation officer Professor James Treadwell. If I can come to you first, Sue, incredibly difficult time, I'm sure, for you at the moment. How did you feel? Presumably you were informed that he was going to be released on parole, first of all. How did you feel when you got that call?
The one for his release, really angry. The one to say that he'd been rearrested was just amazing. It was like winning the lottery. Yeah, he's back where he belongs and he's not going to come back out again. They can't do it again, I hope.
So you were angry, obviously. I mean, we spoke at the time. You were angry about his release.
Yeah, he should never come out.
But when you find out that he has been recalled because of this suggestion that he had approached multiple young women, that must have turned your stomach.
That's just it. When I was told he'd been recalled to prison, but I wasn't told why he'd been recalled to prison. The first question I asked was, has he hurt anybody else? And was told no. So then that's the relief that he's not hurt anybody. He could have. But no, I wasn't told. I mean, it's all allegedly. Nobody's 100% sure that he actually did, but he's back where he belongs. So for now, at least, everybody's a lot safer.
His crimes are unspeakable. He murdered two children, two 15-year-old girls, 3 years apart, one of whom was your sister. It must be unthinkable to you that somebody responsible for a crime like that has devastated not one but two families and left the scars on you and your family, that they could ever be released. But then when he is released with licence conditions, but then taken back into prison, he may have been trying to cheat lie detector tests. He's understood to have approached young women on multiple occasions. He was observed to have a bad attitude, apparently. He may have tried to counteract the results of polygraph tests by controlling and altering his physical responses with breathing techniques. He hadn't committed a further offence, but all of those breaches, you must think now, that's it. Don't let him out again.
Well, yeah. He fooled the parole board once, but I don't think he'll manage it again. Hopefully they've seen through him this time.
So would there ever been a moment where you might have accepted his release if you were convinced personally that he had changed or he had learned or he had shown remorse? Is there anything at all that you say, OK, I will accept him being released?
No, there's nothing anybody could say or do that would make me think that his release was a good thing, no.
Which is entirely understandable, by the way.
He's clever. Everybody knows he's clever and he's a danger. He's not going to suddenly be a nice human being and settle down and have... I know. He's dangerous. He's not going to change.
Well, let's speak to Professor James Treadwell. He's Professor of Criminology at Staffordshire University and a former probation officer. Just going on Sue's point there, Professor, I mean, can people change? I mean, is it even possible that somebody who's done something so terrible, horrific, I mean, the words don't even describe what this man did. It's disgusting. But is there any world where these people can change and we can accept them back on our streets?
Good morning, Adil. Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one because in the case of Pitchfork, I don't think he's changed and I don't think he can change. And one of the things I'm keen to suggest is that we shouldn't view all cases in some ways as alike, as murder is murder, because there are very different degrees. And to be honest with Pitchfork, I don't think he is a man who should ever have been released from prison. I think there was a failing initially to give him a whole life tariff, and that is exactly the sort of sentence that's needed for him. He needs to spend the entirety of his life in custody. But of course, when you find people guilty of murder, we also open the door to people committing the same offence who are 17, 15, 16-year-old boys who are killing other young boys on inner city estates. And I think it's a really important message that we send out societally that you know, if you commit something really grave and heinous, in most instances, and I do say most instances, you can move beyond that and be rehabilitated. But I think that very belief in rehabilitation also requires a belief that some people perhaps are beyond the pale of that work. And when you look at where Pitchfork was as a man and then the offences that he committed, I think that puts him in a category where he is so dangerous that the risk is ever there and he should never be released.
Of course, he was given a life sentence, but unless you are given a whole life order, you are at some point eligible for parole to go out, but you can be, as we've seen, recalled because you breached your licence conditions. But once you've breached those conditions, how likely is it that someone who's been convicted of these 2 rapes and murders of children, I mean, they were children, 2 15-year-old girls, how likely is it that that person then gets another chance?
Yeah, I think that is the problem, because legally here, under his current sentence, he will get another chance. The parole board will be asked to, again, at some point, make a judgment about whether Pitchfork is safe to be released into the community, because he has that right to ask for it. And I think that's why it's completely right that we are having that conversation today about rebalancing and whether the needs for public protection in some instances override those of the individual's right to be at liberty again. And there is a background to this whereby, you know, it's because his sentence was prior to 2003 and subsequent to 2003, anyone who'd committed the types of offences that he has committed would never get a second chance. But that to me suggests that there is this gap with a small number of offenders, and that's such a serious gap that considered in there is Ian Huntley, who I'm sure your viewers will have heard of. You know, these are people that could at some point be released again, and I think that the public quite rightly finds that appalling.
And Sue, you must find it appalling that if he'd been convicted after the change in the rules in 2003, he might never have been released from prison.
Yes, definitely. All child killers should get life, and it should mean life. They shouldn't be allowed to get away. No, they shouldn't be allowed back out.
Sue, thank you so much for being with us this morning. You know, we can understand that every development in this story is a pain, is a trauma for you. And Professor James Treadwell, thank you as well. A spokesperson for the parole board said the decision to release Mr. Pitchfork was made back in May and followed consideration of extensive evidence from his community probation officer, his prison probation officer and prison psychologist, who all supported his release.